Welcome, Bronco Nation, my game preview for Boise State versus Memphis. Boise State 2-2 after getting a tough road win on their first non-conference game of the season versus San Diego State last week. And Memphis 3-1 after dropping a close game versus Missouri to put the Memphis Tigers at 3-1 on the season. The game is at September 30th at 2 p.m. Mountain Central Time on ESPN2. Memphis is favored in this game, given a 65.1% chance of winning and favored by 2.5 points per Vegas. Now, there's a lot on the line for both of these teams, who are both seen as preseason New Year's Six contenders. While Boise State's season has not gone the way that fans hoped to start the year, Boise State's New Year's Six hopes are still on the line if they can finish out the season with a good run here through the end. But all of that will depend on how they meet up against these Memphis Tigers. Now, on the other hand, Memphis, yes, they're 3-1, but there is a loss to a Power 5 team if they can finish out the season, if they can win the American Athletic Conference, which them and Tulane are the two teams right now really at the top. They're competing for the projected AAC crown. They have a good chance of going to a New Year's Six game as well. So both teams' New Year's Six hopes ride on this game. But beyond that, it's also a big game because it's Mountain West versus American Athletic Conference. In the modern age of college football, in the post-BCS era, it's been the Mountain West versus the AAC as the two top conferences in college football, and each one of them trying to hedge their bets to present their conference champion as a New Year's Six contender. While the AAC has had an upper hand, at least in the polls recently, the departure of major members to the Big 12 gives the Mountain West the chance to sneak in ahead as the declared best conference in college football. But a lot of that stands on how they play head-to-head against the current AAC teams. So this two of the top teams in each of these conferences. This is one that the eyes of the nation will be on for sure, and also the determiner for who is potentially can project themselves as the best group of five conference in college football. A lot of that will ride on this game. Now, it's not all inclusive. Those are the matchups, those are the factors, but a lot of it will be determined based on how both these teams perform in this matchup. So we're going to go through keys to the game, key players. We'll talk about the series history between these two teams, and we'll also end with a score prediction. So before we go any further in the video, right now, make sure you go down and put your score prediction for this game, whether you're a Boise State fan or a Memphis fan watching this. I want to hear from all of you. Give me your score prediction. Give me any thoughts on this matchup. Overall, your own keys to the game if you want to, and we'll have a great discussion after the video. That's my favorite part of these videos, being able to have that discussion with you. On to series history. Well, there is none. First ever matchup between these two teams, so it's going to be a big determiner, not just for all the other stakes that I laid out, but for Boise State. Anytime you play a team for the first time, you want to establish dominance. You don't want those losses coming back to haunt you later, and getting a big win versus Memphis in their first ever matchup will be key. Talking about keys, let's talk about key players. For Boise State, we're going to be having Ashton Jeanty as our number one key player. He's been a key player for Boise State throughout many of these videos so far to start the season, but he really definitely established himself as the key player on this team last week versus San Diego State. Took over, had 254 yards of total offense. He was the spark that allowed Boise State to go down and win that game. Right now, he actually has the most all-purpose yards in college football, and he is in the running to be one of the best running backs in college football this season. He has, so far, rushing 407 yards. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns and a long of 58. He also has 285 receiving yards, which puts him second on the team, 15.8 yard average overall in receptions, 2 touchdowns, and a long of 50. So a multi-purpose back who can catch. He's got good hands, but when he gets in the open field, whether that's versus the secondary or versus the players right at the D-line, I mean, he can shake you when you are on top of him right 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He can still shake you and get another 6 yards after contact. So this is an incredible running back for Boise State who has exploded onto the scene. He's been great so far this season, but last week was a career game for him, and we saw him unlock a second level of his potential, and I think we're going to see an even stronger performance to end the season than we saw to start it for Ashton Jeanty. And he's going to need a big one versus this Memphis team that's going to be putting up a strong offensive effort. We'll get to that when we talk about the key players for Memphis. Second key player for me is going to be Eric McAllister. We've seen Ashton Jeanty unlock his full second level potential, and we've seen Eric McAllister establish himself as the number one wide receiver, but we still have yet to see both of them in the same game performing at that next level elitism, and that's what we need to see. We need to see the Titus Young and Doug Martin combos. We need to see the Cedric Wilson and Alexander Madison combos that Boise State's always had with that elite receiver core and the elite running game. game. There is really nobody right now stepping up as that second elite receiver for Boise State, so it's all on Eric McAllister, and if he can unlock his full potential in the game, same way as Ashton Jeanty at the same time, it's going to be a hard threat to stop both of them. We saw some new moves out of Eric McAllister. He's kind of been that skinny deep threat guy, but he was able to get some make some moves in open space. He had 2 spin moves that was able to pick up 10 plus yards after catch on both of those last week. So we're starting to see him developing another side of his potential as well. But both these players playing at an elite level is going to be big for Boise State to get this win versus Memphis on the road. My third key player of the game, and it's his first time appearing as a key player for Boise State, is going to be nose tackle Sheldon Newton. He played sparingly in the first 2 games and didn't record any stats versus North Dakota, but he was the starter versus San Diego State, and he made a huge impact. Statistically, he only had 3 tackles, but his presence was felt. Boise State had a much increased pass rush versus San Diego State. They were making a much bigger impact along that defensive line and forcing the running backs to bounce back inside, and Boise State was doing a much better job overall, and a big part of that was Sheldon Newton's contribution. This was a guy that Winston Venable, when he came on my channel and we previewed the Boise State defense and then talked about that front 7, this was a guy, a transfer in from NAU, that we had a lot of high hopes for. Remember, Winston Venable, an FCS transfer himself coming over to Boise State. This was a guy that we both had high hopes for. He's a senior on the team, a lot of experience. He's played at a high level personally himself. He's done a great job at the FCS level, had a lot of high career bests, and he comes over to Boise State. This is a guy that adds not just senior leadership, but also a next level type play for Boise State, where he was able to use his experience and his knowledge to help Boise State have a much stronger presence on that defensive line, which has been one of those units that you expected to be really strong for Boise State with all these transfers coming in, all these fresh faces, but has not necessarily established themselves until last week versus San Diego State. They're going to need to continue that performance, and part of that is going to be a big showing from Sheldon Newton. All right, talking about top players for Memphis, we've got the quarterback Seth Hennigan. He is one of the elite passers in college football, top 20 returning from last season. He had 3,571 yards passing last year, and this year he's off to a good clip as well. 1,107 yards passing, completing close to 70% of his throws, 8 touchdowns, just 5 picks. And he's also managed to add some rushing in there as well, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Now, he's not necessarily, he's not a Taylon Green dual threat kind of guy, but he's going to be able to pick up some yards if you leave him alone in the open space. Now, for the wide receiver, that's probably the biggest threat for Boise State, and it's taken him a while to establish himself, but he definitely established himself last week versus Missouri. Is going to be Rock Taylor, 6'3", 215 pounds, 297 yards so far in the season and a touchdown, but 143 of those came versus Missouri. I would expect after an explosive game like that, where he steps up and establishes himself as this top wide receiver for Memphis, to see him also attempt to exploit versus Boise State's weak secondary and have a second explosive game as well. He's identified himself. The coaches know about him. The quarterback knows about him. They're going to be looking to get the ball his way, and this is a guy Boise State has got to shut down. Boise State's secondary has been weak this season. They seem to be improving with some new fresh faces back there, but even versus San Diego State, a team that's not known for long completions, had 6 20-plus yard passes, which was the most they'd had so far in the season, versus Boise State secondary that's still struggling to shut down the passing game. Rock Taylor is going to be a big impact player for Memphis Tigers. And then last but not least, we've got the running back Blake Watson, who's kind of the Ashton Jeanty of the Memphis offense. He can run and he can receive. 342 yards receiving, 5.9 yard average, 4 touchdowns. Also second on the team receiving, just like Ashton Jeanty is. 213 yards receiving and a touchdown. So statistics slightly less than Ashton Jeanty, but also a dominant, versatile back for Memphis that Boise State's going to have trouble shutting down all game long. All right. So, keys the game for Boise State to go out and get this win, because this is kind of a program-defining game for Boise State. It's been really tough to evaluate them so far because the first game they played was versus a top 10 program, and then Memphis, UCF and San Diego State, you don't know quite where those programs are, and this UCF game was so close. There were miscues on both sides that allowed Boise State to have a chance to win that game, and unfortunately UCF ending up with just one more opportunity. San Diego State's a tough one because, again, they open up 2-0, and then they lose the next 2 teams to Group of 5, to Power 5 top programs, and they play well in those, and you don't know where they are at. You don't know what kind of benchmark they are, and of course an FCS win for the Broncos along the way as well. This is a team that we know how good they are. We know where they're at. They're 3-1. They've played well against the group of 5. They have an FCS win, and they also played well and almost beat a Missouri team. This is a program that should be where Boise State is at or above. This is the level that Boise State should be playing at. Year 3, offensive coordinator who's coming into his 5th game so far for Boise State, so he's gotten some experience under his belt. A secondary that's had some new faces, had a little bit of time to gel. They're still rotating some guys in and getting them accustomed to the game, but they've had a chance to fix issues, and it's an offensive role where new guys have had a chance to step up and start to establish themselves, like Genty and McAllister, or not new, but younger guys on this offense, a chance to establish themselves. So, 5th game of the season versus a 3-1 top group of 5 team, you expect Boise State to be Boise State and come in and compete and win this game. I've been accused so far this season of being too optimistic about this program, about not calling them out on their issues. I think that I do call them out on the issues. I think, though, I also point out a lot of positives, and maybe the negative points get overrun by the positive ones. But this is a game that if Boise State does not perform well on, you're going to hear me change my tune a little bit on this season, because that will be a worrying trend if Boise State is not able to come and show up against this group of 5 team, top level, but also group of 5 program that they should definitely beat. It's on the road. They're a good program. This is not a guaranteed win by any sense of the imagination, and it's going to be a tough one for Boise State, but you expect them to come out and compete and win this game. So these 3 keys are going to be key for Boise State to be able to come in and win this matchup. But if Boise State is unable to, or if they get, God forbid, blown out in this game, there is going to be some concerns, some definite concerns that are going to need to be identified and fixed for Boise State going forward that may lead to some major changes. So, Boise State versus Memphis, these are the 3 keys for Boise State to go in and get the win that this program desperately needs to prove that they are on the right track, that they're on an upward trajectory, and all is well on the home front for the Boise State Broncos. Number 1 key, don't believe the hype. Memphis Tigers, they're 3-1. They're viewed as a top contender in the AAC with Tulane and a potential New Year's 6 opponent. However, the last 3 seasons, Memphis has started the year 3-1 or better. They had a couple seasons they've started 4-1. So the last 3 seasons going back to 2020, so 4 seasons if you include this year, the last 4 seasons going back to 2020, Memphis has started the season 3-1. In not one of those did they finish better than 8 wins. And last season, starting 3-1, they finished the season 7-6 overall. So this is a tough team. This is a team that you have to come up and put your best effort forward. However, this is not a team like Washington where you have to come in with a radically different game plan because you're undermatched. You're not undermatched in this one. You should match up against this team. You need to come in and play to your style, to your strengths, emphasizing the run game, using the quarterback's legs, emphasizing the short passing game, using the threats that Boise State has established so far, and not drastically changing anything to beat this Memphis team. This is not a Power 5 program. This is not a next level group of 5 team. This is a group of 5 program that's top tier, but one that you should be able to beat. Boise State should not be coming into this one uncertain or questioning themselves. They should be confident, and they should come out and confidently run their system to beat this program. So I am in no way saying come in and just assume a win. However, I'm also saying don't come in feeling like you're the drastic underdog. You're a 2.5 point underdog. That's it. You can win this game. You should be the better team. Come in and play like that. Key 2 for Boise State is don't overplay Genty. Ashton Genty is taking over this program right now, and there can be a trend, especially when you haven't identified other offensive players to rely on, to focus in on the player who has the hot legs in this case, hot hand if it was a basketball reference, but the hot legs in this case. Do not do that. Boise State has got to establish some secondary players to back up Genty. If you start focusing in on just one aspect of this offense, it's going to be incredibly easy for Memphis or other teams down the line to adjust their defense and stop you. And it's also going to take away from the development and potential of those other players. Boise State has other elites on this roster. Taylen Green has not quite adapted to this offense yet, but we started to see a second level or a different form of him, a different version of Taylen Green that we've seen so far this season. in the second half versus San Diego State, when we started seeing his legs being used in the running game, giving him some confidence, being able to rely, of course, on the running back, but also being able to start finding wide receivers down the field. We started to see a second level of Taylen Green unlock. Not his full potential yet, definitely mistakes, but less mistakes made than in the first half, and we started to see some confidence developing. He has the potential to be the Ashton Jeanty elite on this team. Eric McAllister, another player for Boise State that has shown that he has the potential to be the next great wide receiver at Boise State. There are other guys on this roster, Jean-Ray Dubar, Prince Strawn, potentially. There are other guys on this team, young guys that really haven't been given their full chance to shine yet, who have the potential to step up and be the next great player for Boise State. You have got to continue to give those guys the opportunity to shine so they can unlock that full potential and not give Memphis the opportunity to just stop your one player. Also, if this trend continues where Ashton Jeanty is taking 25 plus of the touches every single game and your backup running back is only taking 5 carries, Jean-Ray Dubar had 5 carries last week, and he played great. He didn't have any major negative losses, and he hasn't fumbled. He's played great as a true freshman so far this season. He's had positive carries on almost every single touch he's had, and he hasn't fumbled the ball. He's making good decisions, and he's showing good ball control. He's showing that he has proven that he can be trusted, that he can be given more reps. You need to go back to the 2-back system. Yes, let Ashton Jeanty explode and be his true self. Don't hold him back. But at the same time, allow him to stay fresh throughout the game and try to take some of those shots off of him. Don't, I'm not saying 50-50 split, but some system of 60-40, 70-30 where we're still seeing Jean-Ray Dubar in the game with 10 or so carries and Ashton Jeanty reaching the 20 or so number is going to be a good system for Boise State. You have got to use both of your backs in this system so that Boise State does not get Ashton Jeanty hurt, because if they continue on this track, you're going to lose your offense. He is your entire offense right now, and you're going to be in a system where you have not developed other players to step up and take over the load, other running backs or other forms of offense like the passing game. You're going to be in a system where you haven't developed other players to step up and take the load, and you're going to have a running back who's now out for a prolonged period of time, and you reduce his potential this season and going forward throughout the rest of his career at Boise State. So don't overplay Jeanty. Continue to push him. He's shown that he deserves a rock and that he is going to be your key to unlocking success for this program. However, you still have to don't get sucked in to his abilities and forget all about the other players on this team. You've got a fifth-year tight end that has been underutilized so far. The tight end passing game has been much underutilized. You have a great wide receiver. You have a great quarterback with great running ability that has, again, also been underutilized. There are other aspects of this offense that have not been fully tapped into, not just because the players aren't playing to their full potential necessarily, but also because the offense is not shifting in a way that allows those players to unlock that next level ability that they present. So, Ashton Jeanty is the key to your success. He's the key player of this game. But at the same time, don't become so sucked into him that he is the only offensive weapon that you rely on to win these games, especially a major program like Memphis. Third key overall, fix the coverage unit. Boise State has been able to get away with some bad coverage and still win a couple of these games. Now, they lost, of course, Washington and San Diego State. Both of those games, they allowed long returns. But you wouldn't necessarily say that the return was the reason they lost those games. San Diego State had some long returns, 71-yard return, had some great field position set up on both punt returns and kick returns that Boise State, due to their defense, managed to be able to escape and win that one. But in every single game, Boise State has allowed a 34-yarder or longer return in the kicking game, and they allowed a 71-yarder last week. They are 114th in the country in coverage right now, in kick return coverage. They're allowing an average of 24.5-yard average per carry on every kick return this season. They have got to fix the personnel. It's one of the worst coverage units I've ever seen at Boise State, and it's been a program that in the last few years has struggled to be consistent in the kick return game. San Diego State versus Boise State have traditionally featured long kick returns. But it's not just a rivalry nature. This has gone through every game that Boise State has played so far. And a team like Memphis is going to make you pay if you are not able to prevent them having massive field position swings to start their drives. So Boise State has got to fix their coverage, whether that's a mixing up of personnel, a mixing up of scheme, and if none of that works, focusing on kicking it out of the end zone or doing a proper squib kick, because I don't know what that was last week that looked like a pooch punt to the right side. It looked like it was an attempted squib kick that went out of bounds and still gave San Diego State the ball at the 45. So either kick it out of bounds, and if you're unable to do that, focus on the squib kick and making sure the squib kick is done well. Something has got to change for Boise State. Again, this is a program that their defense has not shown that they are locked tight. Their offense has not shown that they can score every drive. So a lot of these wins are going to come down to special teams performance. Overall, special teams has been awesome in the kicking and punting. But in the return game, both for Boise State returning and for their coverage, both those systems have been lacking. Boise State has got to fix that if they want to win a big game like this on the road. So 3 keys: don't believe the hype, don't overplay Jeanty, and fix the coverage unit. So summarizing this game, for Boise State, Memphis is scary. They really, really are. I'm saying don't overhype them, but at the same time, this is a scary program to take on the road. They have a strong passing game, which you know is your weakness at stopping. They have a versatile running back. They have a very stingy defense. Overall, they're only allowing 169.8 yards passing per game and 150 yards rushing. Now, again, they've played some option teams, but even with playing an option team, playing Navy and Missouri, a Power 5 program, they're still overall only allowing 150 yards rushing per game. Boise State has major issues right now. I know I don't highlight them as much as maybe I should in my videos because I want to focus on the positives that get swept under the rug, but they do have major issues. They have a stagnant and unimaginative passing game right now. They have vulnerabilities in the secondary, and they have and their offense is channeling through one player. Throughout all of the games for Boise State so far, if you take Ashton Jeanty out of the system, they're getting blown out in every single one and don't have any offensive production. Now, there have been some games where other players have stepped up, but it's all started with Ashton Jeanty. That's great to have a running back like that you're able to rely on that is able to step up like that. But you also don't want a system that has all of your offense in one single basket, especially a running back where things can happen when they're overused. So Boise State has a lot of issues right now. However, at the same time, Ashton Jeanty just had a career performance. He is getting better and better. North Dakota aside, which was kind of right early in the game, he suffered some form of injury and he just didn't look himself the rest of the game. North Dakota aside, he's looking better and better and better with each of these games, and he just had a massive performance. Usually when a running back has a massive performance like that, they unlock a next level for themselves the rest of the season. The offensive line looks amazing. The best offensive line I've seen from Boise State in the last 5 years. There's a reason Ashton Jeanty was the first running back since Alexander Madison in 2018 to go for over 200 yards in a game, because the last 5 years, going all the way back to 2019, the offensive line for Boise State has been absolutely garbage. But Boise State's offensive line finally seems to have fixed its issues. They are doing a great job in the blocking for both the run game and the passing game. And Ashton Jeanty is being able to unlock the second level potential of himself, in part because he's getting some great blocks up front. McAllister seems to have arrived. He's arrived as the starting receiver. He's unlocking different elements of himself, and I think he is on the level of breaking out and establishing himself for the rest of the season as one of the best wide receivers of Boise State. The youth are settling into their position, both on the D-line and in the secondary. You have guys like Virgin, who is having huge impact in the game. He's a new guy for Boise State. You're having guys like I talked about, obviously, with Sheldon Newton. There's faces across this defensive line, the secondary with Ty Benesfield, who is doing an amazing job as a true freshman at secondary. Zion Washington is playing well. Boise State is starting to unlock their potential in the secondary and in the front seven through their youth movement. On the other side of that, seniors are stepping up. Dimitri Washington had his best game of the season last week, and I think we have started to see him unlock his full potential, and we're going to see a different version of himself going through the rest of the season as well. So Boise State's defense is starting to gel. Were there opportunities given versus San Diego State? Yes. But they also had 3 drives where they forced field goals or turnovers for San Diego State. 1 field goal missed, a field goal made, and a turnover in the red zone that were huge for Boise State to be able to win that game. They came up with major stops at the other end of the field when San Diego State was backed up at Boise State 1. And yeah, while they allowed a lot of runs for San Diego State, in the end, they were able to come up strong and stop the quarterback and give Boise State back the ball. So yes, they are not consistent throughout, but Boise State's doing a great job of forcing turnovers, and they are starting to fix their issues and become more consistent in that defense. We're starting to see Boise State unlock a second-level potential. I know I'm using second level a lot throughout this video, but it's true. Boise State is starting to show a different version than what we've seen through the first few games, and it's because players are stepping up and starting to gel together on defense. Green's legs are being better used. It's not just him being a better player and being more confident. It's also the offensive scheme is relying more on his running ability, which is what it should have been doing from the very beginning. And Memphis has been vulnerable the last 2 games versus the running game. Versus Navy, they gave up almost 300 yards rushing. Of course, it's an option team, but Navy was having a pretty easy day rushing the ball versus Memphis. And Missouri had over 200 yards rushing versus Memphis as well. Boise State is a run-heavy team. There's going to be opportunities based on the last 2 games for Boise State to come out and exploit that. This is going to be an incredibly tough test for Boise State, and the end result will hang in the balance throughout this entire game. I don't expect either team to blow out either program. I think this is going to be an incredibly tough game for Boise State to win. But if they can get through it, if they can win this game, it will be an incredible confidence booster. It'll be a program-building win in this 3rd season for Andy Avalos to be able to establish confidence in this program and run through the rest of this Mountain West schedule in the way that would potentially set them up for a New Year's Six game, if not just a Mountain West championship and a bowl game versus Pac-12 team. There's a potential for Boise State to do something incredibly special still this season, and it all starts with this Memphis game. So, I'm still looking at this program positively because while I see the negatives, I also see a lot of positives that are starting to stack up in this team's favor. So for Boise State versus Memphis, I am predicting a win for Boise State. I'm predicting a narrow one, 38-35. Boise State winning this game with a score of 38 to Memphis' score of 35. But like I said, if this game ends up going differently, if Boise State ends up not winning against a team that they should be matching up against, if they end up losing this game and losing it in dramatic fashion, there are going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered that may lead to some decisions by Boise State that could impact the future of this team. So, predicting a win, it's going to be tough. I acknowledge the weaknesses of this Boise State team, but I also see the strengths of a program that is starting to tick back up on the rise. This is going to be that prove-it game for Boise State and for the season, and I'm expecting and hoping for a win in this game for Boise State versus Memphis. So thanks so much for watching this video. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments. I want to have that discussion with you. I'm sure there are plenty of you who are of a different mind on this one, so I want to have that discussion with you. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you comment. Make sure you give me your score predictions. Make sure you have that discussion with me. And as always, make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and go Big Blue!